Everybody got a snow day today. We're jumping back into this book. A sketch of the life and character of John Fenwick. Oh, I totally been writing this wrong in all my posts. Oof. I think I've been putting a sketch and character of John Fenwick. A sketch of the life and character of John Fenwick by John Clement in 1875. The last time we streamed, um, we read this page, but we're not done with it yet because last time we talked about John Lord Berkeley, and this time on this stream we're going to talk about Sir George Carteret. Those were the two first proprietors of New Jersey, and both kind of were scandalous, I guess. Yeah, they abused their powers, and apparently Berkeley messed up money. Um, he may have messed up the Duke of York's money. He definitely, well, I can't say definitely, but it seems apparent that he had financial problems. That's why he sold his share. Although I really do feel like we'll figure out that him giving up his share of New Jersey probably had more to do with conflicting ideas and beliefs rather than a financial situation. But we'll figure that out. But basically, because these two guys were loyal to King Charles II while he was in exile, they were just rewarded even though they were abusing their power, and they were kind of distasteful men. Berkeley was accused of selling government seats, or government offices, or both. He was accused of abusing his power, which I guess that would be one abuse of power. But like I said the last time when we were talking about Berkeley, although he was obviously not a stand-up guy, uh, I still think that he's a drop in the bucket compared to Sir George Carteret, and that's who we're going to dive into with today. Who was also just rewarded constantly throughout the rest of his life, even after public shame and being accused of abusing certain powers. It was pretty apparent that the king, and I got this written down in my notes, the king did not care about the public opinion of these two guys and rewarded them greatly when they were abusing their power, all because they were loyal to him in exile. So you had the Carolina Charter, 1663, I believe. King Charles II gives these two guys plus six more guys a section of land in the Carolinas. Um, these two guys are given New Jersey to split. Berkeley was made Baron of Stratton in 1658. Oh wait, he was knighted in 1638. Became Baron of Stratton in 1658. Appointed Lord Lieutenant of Ireland in 1670. Ambassador to France in 1674. Appointed Lord President of Connaught for life in 1661. He was an ambassador in a few situations. He was the treasurer to the Duke of York also. Sir George Carteret was the treasurer of Ireland. But anyway, we're going to reread the parts that are concerning our research today, and then we will dive into Carteret. Quick shameless plug. Ooh, actually, before we dive into the history, I have pictures I want to show you guys, and now that it's the new year, I can, and I'm stoked. Let me think. Hold on. I'll be right back. Alright. I'm only... This was like a collab or whatever, so if you go to my Linktree, Linktree/isforward, I got like all my content up there, and my socials and everything. And if you go to my Instagram, you'll see all my photography. I've been on this huge film kick lately. It's been so addictive. But the pictures I'm about to show you, I'm slowly posting them on my Instagram. You can check them out, and they'll be a part of other future collabs and projects that you may or may not see in the future. But I'm not going to show you all of them because I'm just going to show you the ones that I took out of respect for the other artist, other photographer, other creator. This one I'm so stoked about, and no one's really been excited about this one. Hold on, let me get rid of my face. I love this photo so much. I love this photo so fucking much. And like with film, it's such a gamble because it's not like digital where you can take. Man, I had a Sony Alpha 2 or 7.2, 7A2. No, maybe that's not right. Sony Alpha, the like digital full frame, full body camera. Is it full frame, full body? Anywho, on that camera you can take like 1,000 pictures in literally seconds. And with film, like you only get 36 shots, and you don't even get to see what those shots are. You have to wait at least 6 weeks before you even see what they are. I've had rolls of film come back, and excuse me, every single picture was white. And I feel like I've never had a roll come back where at least one or two pictures were a bust and just like nothing. Actually, with this roll right here, I can show you. There's There's so many busts in here. Is this one? That one? Although, this one is salvageable. Bust. Bust. Oh. This one's technically a bust, but I really feel like this might be a little salvageable as well. I'm so stoked about this one too. This photo, I don't even know why it gets me. Oh, hold on. Hold on. That photo is amazing. Let me go back to this real quick. Okay, so what I was saying, totally stimming the fuck out right now. Okay, so this photo, right, with film, you don't even know what you're getting until later. It's just like it's such a. It feels, well. There's money involved with it too, so it feels very high stake. But when I took this photo, it honestly was on some bullshit, just to kind of like try to like just take a practice shot. Maybe I was messing with the lens and I don't know, but I didn't intend on getting this, and I don't know if this is a great shot. To me, this is, I create art for myself. This shit gets me so excited. I don't know why, but this photo is one of my faves. The photo that I was trying to get when I got that one is this one, which is a cool shot. You know what I mean? Like it'll find its place in the world. I that's just how it works. Even if it's something down the road, a project will come along where this will fit perfectly with it. I got this one as well. This was a shot that I was like just anticipating so much. I really, really wanted this to come out really good. And it's cool. It's a nice shot. Like I said, I'll find somewhere for it eventually. But I'm not pumped about it. And I was really, really, really looking forward to this one. Excuse me. But that shit's fire. So the shot I didn't mean to get is fire. The lighting, totally accidental. It's just perfect. Tell me it's not. Well, don't actually. Okay, back to this one. This photo's fire. This shit makes me want to like write. Makes me want to write. This photo's a whole vibe. I'm definitely just locked into this photo. If you by chance see this stream and see this part of the stream and you see this photo and this photo makes you feel anything, I don't care what it is, and you like writing, write me something. Linktree/AceFord. Any of there's 100 different ways to reach me on there. Fire. Let's see. This is an example of when you have something in your mind and you try to get it and you execute it. I couldn't have been more happier with this shot. And I got a couple different versions of this shot on a digital camera, which also came out fire. But I'm sorry. The film, just look at the detail in his hands. This is an unedited photo. How do you have so much graininess, so much blurriness in the right places, but yet so much detail? This is a color photo, and there's no colors in this photo that overpower. It's such a dope ass shot, man. I'll show you one more. Another unedited photo, by the way. I wish I could give you. I won't do it right now. I can't. I wish I could show you a photo that my partner, my homeboy, he took on this collab. Because that photo is the perfect example of hashtag no filter, bitch. Like, no edits, no, nothing. Like, straight up 1970s, probably, film camera. Japanese, baby. No edits, no filters, none of that. And I'm not hating. And a lot of photographers do hate, and I'm not hating. I'm all for it. But this picture is a fave of mine from this collab because, like, literally no edits whatsoever, and it's a fire ass photo. All these photos that I've showed you, no edits done on them. But the picture I wish I could show you, this photo is a drop in a bucket compared to that photo. If you get, like, I think I'm a big fan of grain. I really think I'm just a big fan of grain. High grain in the photo. Ooh, actually, I can show you. I'm pretty sure I took this photo. I can show you. This ain't the greatest photo. It's like there's nothing crazy about it, but like look at this. It almost looks like, maybe besides the actual words, this shit looks like it's like colored penciled in. It definitely doesn't look like a photograph. Or maybe I'm just fooling myself. Super stoked. Oh, well, I can show you this too. So, like, I dig the grain, high grain, or whatever the, excuse me, the correct terminology would be for it. I really dig it because it really does something to photos. But, you know, when you're just taking, this was the hotel room, if you're just taking a straight up photo or whatever, like, I can see how someone wouldn't care for the graininess, but people be like, there's still a fire photo. Stop it. Okay, anyway, back Jack. Sir George Carteret. Let's jump back in this. The next year after this charter, which I think was the charter, the Carolina Charter, the Duke of York conveyed to John Lord Berkeley and Sir George Carteret, June 24th, 1664, a certain tract of land in America hereafter to be called New Caesarea, or New Jersey. Done no doubt by request of the king and through his influence with his brother. Duke of York, James the second, maybe? No, that's probably not right. Anywho, Charles II, who was king here, and Duke of York, James, brothers, their dad was King Charles I, whose dad was King James. He had a couple different titles, but he's the dude who had the King James version of the Bible done up. Where do we? The standing of these gentlemen before the public and in the responsible positions they held, if history be true, was certainly very questionable, for the reasons hereafter stated. The first held an honorable place at the court near the person of the king, but was detected in the basest corruptions and forced to resign his office. His intercourse with the Duke of York was also interrupted by similar transactions, and disgrace followed their exposure. Pause. The second was expelled from the House of Commons as a participant in the legislative bribery and other dishonest practices. Both were notorious for the peculations. I learned what that word was. Peculations and breaches of faith wherever connected with the operations of the government. Although these persons deserved other and severer punishment, yet Berkeley was made Baron of Stratton in 1658, appointed Lord Lieutenant of Ireland in 1670, and Ambassador to France in 1674, amongst a half a dozen other things. Carteret was appointed Treasurer of Ireland and continued in that position by the king while charged with the most disgraceful abuse of office, which I really want to know what like that one particular charge was, which we gonna find out today. Public opinion could not influence His Majesty against him, no matter how palpable the proof, for the reason that they had been faithful to him when it was beyond his power, even to remunerate. That was another one I learned the other day. It just took me a second. Remunerate them for their services already rendered. However commendable such sentiments may be in the private life, they will receive condemnation when indulged in to the injury of the government. All right, we'll stop there because this goes into Fenwick. All right, Sir George Carteret. His share of Nova Caesarea would be East Jersey, aka North Jersey. Let's go to images, because they did not do our guy justice in this photo. I'm almost sure. Statues. George Carteret statue to be removed. Yeah. There's a lot of places. I think, this isn't something that's going to shock everybody. But, he had a lot of places named after him. Statues of him. In North Jersey, they really dig this guy. I mean, technically, I guess East Jersey as a state of its own, which it was at one point, that's their founder, I guess, technically. So I was just seeing if anything stood out here. I know there was statues of him. I knew that they might be removed. All right. Vice Admiral. Sir George Carteret. I'm just gonna read through the wiki. I like Wiki. Wiki's cool. They got some shit they need to deal with, like the rest of us. No judgment. But I know back in high school, my teachers would never let any of us submit a research paper with any we couldn't use Wikipedia as a source. Totally understand that though. Totally understand it. And I don't really rely on it for facts. It's just a good starting place, honestly. I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone feels that way. It's a good starting place. And a lot of times, at least for nerds like me, I actually think a lot of the Wikipedia articles, pages are pretty good reads. It's pretty simplistic, I think. But the cool part is when you go all the way down to the bottom, and further reading, because you do get sources. I like going to like here's a lot of the sources here. So click on it. A lot of times it takes you to like the original source. But anyway, let's just run through it quickly. Sir George Carteret, first baronet, 1610 to 1680, was a royalist statesman in Jersey, the Isle of Jersey. Right? Yeah, it's an island country in northwestern Europe and a self-governing British Crown dependency near the coast of northwest France. It is the largest of the Channel Islands and is 14 miles from Cottian Peninsula and Normandy. Royalist statesman in Jersey and England who served in the Clarendon Ministry as Treasurer of the Navy. He was also one of the original Lords proprietors of the former British colonies of Carolina and New Jersey. Carteret, New Jersey, and Carteret County, North Carolina, both in the United States, are named after him. He acquired the manor of Haynes, Bedfordshire, in about 1667. Okay, with the help of his uncle Philip de Carteret II, third Savner of Sark, George was able to gain a position in the Royal Navy. George dropped the DE from his surname when he entered the English Navy, concerned that it sounded too French. Interesting. Carteret joined a small group of naval captains in presenting a memorial of the Navy to King Charles I. According to Samuel Pepys, Carteret was responsible for presenting and recommending the first use of frigates in the Royal Navy from the blueprints of a Frenchman in St. Malo. And I guess this is a type of warship of that era. Samuel Pepys, if I'm saying his name right, I guess he was a politician. Let's see, he served as an Navy board member of Parliament, official in the Navy board and member of Parliament, but is most remembered today for the diary he kept for almost a decade. Though he had no maritime experience, Pepys rose to be the chief secretary to the Royal Navy. But anyway, that diary of his is actually pretty insightful, and it was kept over a 10-year period. He talks about Carteret and John Lord Berkeley in it. He had dinner a lot with Lord Berkeley. comptroller of the Navy in November 1641 for his service to King Charles II. As a result of his early life at sea, he received little or no formal education. His ignorance was embarrassing and a source of much ridicule in later life. Andrew Marvell mocked his poor command of English, and Samuel Pepys remarked that his ignorance of even the most basic Latin phrases would cause a schoolboy to be whipped. Such ignorance is not to be borne in a privy councillor, wrote Pepys severely. Alright, so let's see, the English Civil War. What was he doing? Let's see how long this is. Alright. I know during the Civil War, I believe he was on the island and he kind of protected the island and ran it, and it's, as far as I know, it always stayed in royalist possession. Sounds like they're getting replaced. Oh, he retired on the commencement of the Civil War. He retired from the Navy and withdrew with his family to Jersey, the island, where his uncle Sir Philip de Carteret was the bailiff and lieutenant governor. The island descended into conflict in 1643 with George and his uncle fighting on the side of the Royalists. The Royalists managed to hold on to the twin fortress of Mont Orgueil and Elizabeth Castle, and soon were able to rout the island's parliamentarian supporters. Carteret governed Jersey with great severity, imprisoning parliamentarian supporters and confiscating their property. Commissioned Vice Admiral and knighted in 1645, Carteret conducted a successful privateering operation against parliamentarian merchant ships. After the defeat of the Royalists on the mainland in 1645, Carteret afforded asylum to the Prince of Wales, Charles Stuart, and other refugees of distinction within his government of Jersey, where he served as bailiff. Oh, okay. King Charles II. Dragoons. Carteret also had a small private army made up of royalists, veterans who had fled from England after the defeat of Charles I, and a collection of foreign mercenaries. George Carteret also had Charles II proclaimed king and saint. Okay, had him pronounced king on the island. 1649, having 23 other prominent people of Jersey, including his cousin Sir Philip Carteret and Elias Dumoresque, signed a proclamation after the execution of his father, King Charles I. Okay, in 1651, a parliamentarian expeditionary force was sent to capture the islands. Colonel James Heene was appointed the military commander of the invasion force, which numbered 3,000 men, comprising his own regiment, 6 companies, Sir Hardress Waller's foot, 2 troops of horse, and 200 men from Guernsey. The naval commander was General at Sea Robert Blake, whose fleet included 12 warships and a further 17 supply ships and transports. The fleet was sighted at dawn on the 20th of October to the northeast of Jersey and remained anchored in St. Owens Bay all day, waiting for favorable winds in order to start disembarking their troops on the shore. Upon hearing this news, Sir George Carteret mobilized the Jersey militia as well as his own professional soldiers. He dispatched the militia of Groville to defend the town of St. Helier. I'm reading here if you guys want to read off the screen. The royal, basically 1651, the royalists the New Model Army tried to Parliament. They tried to take the island, and it seems like they weren't successful. Carteret really held it down. After several days of parliamentary and fleet trying to outmaneuver the royalists, leading many militiamen to desert the royalist cause, Admiral Blake decided to land his troops in the evening of the 22nd or 23rd of October. Carteret noticed that some of the ships were heading for the shoreline, and he gave the order for his army to prepare for battle. At first, the royalist cavalry charge was able to throw the parliamentarians back into the sea, with the militiamen firing into the ranks of the fleeing invaders. However, at the crucial moment, the cavalry commander, Colonel Beauville, was struck by a musket bullet and mortally wounded. With this loss, the cavalry fled from the battlefield, and with their retreat, the militiamen soon began to desert, despite the efforts of Carteret to rally them. Colonel Heen's troops then got themselves organized and disembarked without incident. It seems like a lot of people but Carteret was giving up. Colonel Heen soon began to overrun the island, with no resistance being offered by the royalists. Carteret's sole plan was to hold on to the two castles of Mont Orgueil and Elizabeth Castle, as well as the fort on the small inlet of St. Albans Bay, similar to the royalist strategy in 1643. I think that might be when John Fenwick went to Lindisfarne Castle. I could be wrong about that, though. 43? I think that was 43. Just for giggles, let's go see real quick. I think it was over here. No, that was there. No, it was 1648. Womp, womp, womp. Okay. Anywho, this did not go according to plan, however, as the garrison of the St. Albans fort abandoned their post to the overcoming parliamentarians on the 23rd of October. And Mount Orgueil, which was not suited to artillery warfare, surrendered on the 25th of October. George Carteret, however, was determined to hold out at Elizabeth Castle in the hopes that a royalist relief force from France would arrive, or in the hopes of frustrating the parliamentarians so much that they abandoned the siege. See, this is when like history kind of gets exciting. It kind of would be dope to like witness this in some distant way. Elizabeth Castle was a far more imposing fortification than the likes of Mount Orgueil or St. Albans Fort. The castle was built on a rocky inlet which was about a mile off the coast, which meant that it was surrounded by the sea on all sides and made it difficult to be bombarded from the land. It also had an arsenal of 53 cannon defending the site, which had ample munitions and enough provisions for the garrison for about 8 months. Nevertheless, Nevertheless, Colonel Heene erected a number of batteries as close to Elizabeth Castle as possible and began to bombard the castle. Also within Heene's arsenal were three large mortars which fired massive bombs, which were emplaced on a battery near the old harbor of St. Helier. But that was just probably crazy. That was probably just a whole crazy scene. Cannons back and forth, mortars. Oh, snap. On the night of the 9th and 10th November, a mortar shell fell into the roof of the old Abbey Church, which just so happened to be the building where the defenders had been keeping their munitions and gunpowder. The shell exploded on the lowest story of the privy and detonated the 12 barrels of gunpowder inside, which caused a massive explosion. The blast destroyed several adjacent buildings, which buried 40 members of the garrison nearby the blast under rubble. Of these, 16 men were killed, and another 10 were wounded. The blast also destroyed 2/3 of the food stores and beer and cider rations. More people running away. A panic ensued amongst the garrison in the aftermath of the explosion, with a number of the defenders deserting their posts and fleeing to St. Helier. These men were quickly captured and interrogated by the parliamentarians, who provided Colonel Heene with valuable information on the state of the castle's fortifications. The morale in the remaining garrison quickly declined, especially after an incident in which a Jersey man of the garrison was hanged for desertion. Despite these setbacks, George Carteret was determined to hold out for as long as possible, and he proceeded to keep the King's standard flying over Elizabeth Castle for nearly another month. Damn. French wasn't going to help. In that time, he received word from Charles II, who had stated plainly that the French government were unwilling to help for fear of sparking a diplomatic incident with the English Commonwealth. Carteret was therefore very much on his own. Okay, so negotiation commenced between the two sides on the 5th of December, and by the 15th of December, it was agreed the defending garrison was to march out of the castle with full honors, with officers permitted to retain their swords, breastplates, and pistols. Sir George Carteret was allowed to take a single vessel, sail with all his possessions to France, and formally join the household of the exiled Charles II. On the eve of the surrender, Sir George invited Colonel Heene to dinner, and they met each other on the rocks at the foot of the fort. No, at the foot of Fort Charles, which was a part of Elizabeth Castle. And 15th December, he sailed out of there. He stayed in exile in France for 6 years until he was imprisoned in 1657. Thence he ventured to Venice. The warmth and kindness with which he received the refugees earned him a permanent place in the king's affections, and also the friendship of Edward Hyde. I can't remember now, but there's something, this name, Edward Hyde. I know who. Edward Hyde. Him and John Lord Berkeley were fighting over a girl. And Edward Hyde ended up with the chick. Restoration. Appointed Vice Chairman. His career for the next decade is documented in the diary of Samuel Pepys, who joined him as clerk of the Acts to the Navy Board in 1660. Damn, he sold his He exchanged his office as Vice Chamberlain with Lord Anglesey for that of Vice Treasurer of Ireland, an office which he sold in 1669 for £11,000. His influence seems to have been at its height in 1665, when he boasted to Pepys that the king did nothing without his knowledge. However, as the naval war dragged on, the treasurer of the navy was an obvious target of the opposition, and Pepys noted that by the spring of 1666, Carteret was being attacked on all sides. By the autumn of 1667, he confessed to Pepys that he was longing for the quiet of retirement. As treasurer, he was hardworking and free from any suspicion of corruption, although his colleagues at the Navy Board complained that they found his accounts difficult to follow. Although he sat on a number of committees, he was fairly an active member of the House. The fidelity with which Carteret, like John Berkeley, 1st Baron Berkeley of Stratton, had clung to the royal cause gave also great influence at court. He was close to Clarendon and to the Earl of Sandwich, whose daughter married Carteret's eldest son. In recognition of all the help given to him during his exile in Jersey in the 1640s, Charles II gave Carteret a large grant of land, part of the previously named New Netherland, which was promptly renamed New Jersey under his charge. With Berkeley, he became one of the proprietors of the province of Carolina. Carteret County, North Carolina, and the town of Carteret, New Jersey, are named after him. And the city of Elizabeth, everyone knows Elizabeth in Jersey. Elizabeth is named after his wife, as is Elizabethtown in North Carolina. 1665, Carteret was one of the drafters of the Concessions and Agreement, document that provided freedom of religion in the colony of New Jersey. It was issued as a proclamation for the structure of the government for the colony, written by the two proprietors, Lord Berkeley and Sir George Carteret. Okay. And then this is a lot of what I've been hinting to, which Wiki makes it sound not so bad here, but Carteret was a signatory to the several declarations of the Company of the Royal Adventures of England trading into Africa, a document published in 1667 which led to the expansion of the Royal Africa Company. The Royal African Company was an English trading company established in 1660 by the House of Stuart and the City of London merchants to trade along the West African coast. It was overseen by the Duke of York, the brother of Charles II of England. We'll dive into that more in a second. In 1669, he faced expulsion from the House of Commons for misconduct as vice chamberlain, being accused of embezzlement. After a statement from the king expressing his satisfaction with Carteret and acquittal by the House of Lords, the inquiry against him lapsed. He was in fact generally regarded as an honest man. 1673, he was appointed one of the Lords of the Admiralty and continued in the public service until his death on 14th of January 1680. Shortly before Carteret's death, the king proposed to give him the title Baron Carteret, but Carteret died too soon, so the honor was granted to his grandson George. And George, who I think received most of his estate, the grandson, George, received most of his Carteret's estate. And the Carolina Charter, 7 of the 8 proprietors sold their share back to the crown. Grandson George Carteret, he was the only one who didn't. He kept the share of New Jersey, and he kept the share of Carolina, which was like the Granville district. I think it sits somewhere along the border of Virginia and North Carolina. I think that stayed in his possession well up to the Revolutionary War. I could be wrong about that, but I'm sure. He married his cousin Elizabeth de Carteret. Controversy. Okay, I'm gonna just read this whole clip right here. George Carteret is seen as a divisive figure in Jersey, which some seeing him very much as swashbuckling local hero, and others as prolific slave trader who made his fortune through piracy and slave trading. What is swashbuckling? No. Okay, behaving in a brave and exciting way. Okay. Maybe when he was defending the Isle of Jersey. With some seeing him very much as swashbuckling local hero, and others as a prolific slave trader who made his fortune through piracy and slave trading. Jersey writer Ollie Taylor, in his blog The Whitewashing of George Carteret, says that on one hand, Carteret was Carteret has also been described as a hero, Jersey's greatest son, one of Jersey's greatest figures, and a role model for youngsters. But Taylor is also critical of a revisionist history, saying, by ignoring a fundamental part of Carteret's story, it ends up being exactly that, a rewriting of history. He explains that Carteret was one of the founding 6 committee members of the Company of Royal Adventures into Africa, set up in 1660 to trade in gold, ivory, and slaves, which apparently was also a family affair, with his son James collecting over 300 slaves from Africa for transportation to the West Indies during one of the company's early voyages in 1663. The company was succeeded 9 years later and was the template for the Royal African Company, of whom Carteret was a consultant and early minor investor. The Royal African Company went on to ship more African slaves to the Americas than any other institution in the history of the Atlantic slave trade. Between 1680 and 1688, Between 1680 and 1688, it transported approximately 5,000 slaves a year, totaling around 212,000 between the years 1662 and 1731. It's estimated that 44,000 men, women, and children died en route, with thousands of those who did survive arriving in the New World with the company's initials branded on their chests. In 2014, a constable of St. Peter sought and received over £36,000 in public funds to erect a statue of Carteret in Jersey to commemorate the 350th anniversary of the founding of New Jersey. In June 2020, following the murder of George Floyd and the widespread removal and destruction of monuments of those involved in slave trading around the world, the statue in St. Peter was defaced with white paint due to Carteret's involvement with the Royal Africa Company. One historian called the company the single most prolific trader of slaves. After calls from some residents of Jersey to move the statue to a museum were ignored, it was defaced again in August of 2020 with red paint and chains. Okay. Alright, let's go back to Google. Let's see what we're gonna say. Oh, there's that article by the Ollie Taylor. Oh, come on. No. Okay. Let's see. This whitewashing of history can also be seen in the pamphlet that was issued for the statue's unveiling. The only mention of slavery within it relates to Carteret rescuing 270 Englishmen from the slave trade when he was 27. It goes on to describe the statue as portraying Carteret in an imposing, thoughtful, yet approving mood, as if he is aware that his statue is the catalyst for a rekindling of lost friendships between Jersey and New Jersey. Carteret has also been described as a hero, Jersey's greatest son, one of Jersey's great figures, and a role model for youngsters, highlighting just how much of a positive figure he has been portrayed as. So what aspect of history has been erased? That he was one of the founding 6 committee members of the Company of Royal Adventures into Africa, set up in 1660 to trade in gold, ivory, and slaves, which apparently was also a family affair, with his son James collecting over 300 slaves from Africa for transportation to the West Indies during one of the company's early voyages in 1663. The company was succeeded 9 years later and was the template for the Royal African Company, of whom Carteret was a consultant and early minor investor. The Royal African Company went on to ship more African slaves to the Americas than any other institution in the history of the Atlantic slave trade. Between 1680 and 1688, it transported approximately 5,000 slaves a year, totaling around 212,000 between 1662 and 1731. It's estimated that the 44,000 men, women, and children died en route, with thousands of those who did survive arriving in the New World with the company's initials branded on their chests. As I wrote previously, Carteret also enacted the concession and agreement in 1664 that offered additional land per slave for any settler arriving in New Jersey to encourage population growth for his newly gifted American state. This led to New Jersey having one of the highest slave populations, holding captive more than 2/3 of all enslaved black in the North, leading to it being labeled as the slave state of the North. His contribution to the historical record of the transatlantic slave trade is clearly significant, and not just in local terms either. Many have argued that we cannot judge the past by today's moral standards. Pause. If I had a penny for every time people tell me that we cannot judge the past by today's moral standards, I would be rich. I would be rich AF. I'd be so rich. That's like the number one thing that I hear when I've always had these little joys at finding and exposing unfavorable facts about beloved historical figures. And every time I've done it, that's one of the first response that I get out of most people, especially other people who dig history. We can't judge the past by today's moral standards. And you know, my argument back to that is that like we can judge them by these moral standards, even though it's the past, because at the time when this was actually more normal to society, owning slaves, right? At that time, there were already abolitionists, if I said that word right. So, like, obviously, it was a moral issue then, too, if you had people who were willing to and who did resort to violence and war to get that message across that slavery was wrong and that, you know, all human beings are equally human beings. So I think that's a poor ass argument, if we're being frank. And this person says, which to an extent I don't disagree with. Suck it, nerds. However, 4 Quakers and Mennonites in Pennsylvania signed a petition as early as 1688 against the traffic of men body, marking the beginning of the anti-slavery movement among people of European descent. To think that no one had issues with slavery before that petition is clearly a reflection of the denial and a lack of the honesty which still exists about this period of history. So he just proved a point there, the same point that I just said a little while ago. Quakers weren't so violent in their, after conversion. Most of them weren't violent folks and didn't really resort in violence. And they definitely didn't jive with slavery. They were not cool with that shit at all. But that's something that gets thrown around a lot. And by the end of this book that we're like digging through, we will all see that although Quakers did not believe in slavery, they were still very, very, very much racist. Former St. Peter Constable John Refault, who has not responded to my 2017 email about Carteret's past, and by his own admission in the pamphlet I mentioned earlier says he was not aware of the man's history prior to 2013, has tried to redirect the debate to one about modern-day slavery, stating, "Don't get angry about the past is the past. Tearing things down isn't going to make that better, but actually if we focus on modern slavery." Yeah, here's a good point here. It is not that Mr. Refault wanted to promote a slave trader or is himself a racist, but he certainly appears to be surprisingly ignorant of his past, considering his historical research prior to the statue's unveiling. What's clear is that both the former and current Constable of St. Peter are now fully aware of it, yet are still failing to appropriately address the issue. This is about setting the historical record straight, acknowledging the wrongs that have been done in order to move forward for the betterment of society. I have a couple thoughts with this. Forgive me if you don't agree. First note, this is what the problem really is with most people. And most people who give that you can't judge the past by today's moral standards, blah, 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 blah. Here's the real bottom line, like you said right here. Like, these people aren't promoting slave trade, or these people aren't necessarily racist. They're ignorant. They're ignorant of the past. They're ignorant of the history associated with some of these things. And instead of just having a moment of humility, healthy humility, and just taking accountability and just saying I didn't know and addressing that, you get all this other nonsense. Like, people, I guess really people would just, I don't know. That's the note about that. It's really not that people mean anything bad. And I can't speak for everything. I'm just, maybe I'm completely wrong about this, but like he said here, like, that's what I assume in most people. Like, they're not racist, or they don't want to promote those, like, evil parts of history. They're just ignorant. They just don't know. They just don't know, honestly. That's really what it boils down to, in my opinion. And, like, I never really took a stance on taking down statues or defacing statues or not having statues that like represent like not so nice characters of the past. Um, to me, really, it doesn't really matter either way. And I think a lot of things in life, like we have choices on, and I will admit that this may be very easy for me to say, um, considering my skin color and the relation that that has with my experience in this life. Um, it doesn't really bother me if they're up or not. Um, let's say that they're left up. Um, like let's just can we take it as like a isolated incident, like each one of its own? Like if we take the Carteret statue, I'm not bothered if they leave it up, but I also don't and won't look at it as a memorial of someone great. I'll always use it for the opportunity to shine light on the parts of history that need to be talked about. And I think that that's like a good thing. If it's always there, you can always point to something and say, here's an example of, like, an example of whitewashing history, which there's thousands of examples. But now you have, even with this article, you have something to point to and say, this is this is an example of A, B, and C. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's just how I see it. But the fact that it got defaced doesn't upset me. If they took it down or I found out that they took it down, that wouldn't upset me either, honestly. But then like we get into other situations, right? We get into other situations um where like I forgive me, I really don't even remember his name. He was a piece of shit anyway. Uh I know he was used as a character in Forrest Gump. Uh, something Forrest or Forrest something. Anyway, he had a lot to do with the KKK and a lot of schools and places in the South and in the Bible Belt were named after him. Yeah, let's rename that shit. I'm all for renaming that shit. Like, we ain't giving that type of. It ain't JFK where we're naming everything after him. Like, nah, I'm not for all that. I'm not for that at all. I don't know. Isolated incidents, isolated situations, I guess. Oh man, my leg is cramping up. It's been cold with the snow and shit. Alright, I'm gonna take a quick break. I'll be back in just a minute. I'm sorry about that. I got a crazy cramp in my leg. Damn. Anyway, I'm going to actually wrap it up soon. Let's see if there's anything. Key points about Sir George Carteret. Criticized for poor financial management. He was accused for embezzlement. Let's look up, since it was brought up, Royal African Company. All right. Why does that? Okay. Now I don't think so. This is the New Jersey flag. The flag commemorates the state's commitment to freedom and its rich agricultural traditions. Anywho, I thought this flag, or whatever this is, kind of looked like it. The RAC was founded after Charles II ascended to the English throne in the 1660 Stuart Restoration, and he granted it a monopoly on all English trade with Africa. While the company's original purpose was to trade for gold in the Gambia River, as Prince Rupert of the Rhine had identified gold deposits in the region during the Interregnum, the RAC quickly began trading in slaves, who became its largest commodity. Here's an important fact. Historians have estimated that the RIC shipped more African slaves to the Americas during the Atlantic slave trade than any other company. They also dealt in other commodities such as ivory, which were primarily sourced from the Gold Coast region. This is interesting. After William III of England rescinded the company's monopoly in 1697 under pressure from the Parliament of England, the RIC became insolvent by 1708, though it survived in a state of much reduced activity until 1752, when its assets were transferred to the newly founded African Company of Merchants, which lasted until 1821. George Carteret. Oh, George Carteret. Uh-oh. Oh, I think I'm lagging. George Carteret. No. Hold on. Calveret. I'm getting names mixed up at this point. Who was the first Lord Baltimore? Calvert. Woo! That would have broke my heart. That would have broke my heart if that was who I thought it was. George Carteret. That might be just a typo. Sir George Carteret. Yeah. He did become King James II when he became king. He was the Duke of York. Historian William Pettigrew has stated that this company shipped more enslaved African women, men, and children to the Americas than any other single institution during the entire period of the transatlantic slave trade. And that investors in the company were fully aware of its activities and intended to profit from this exploitation. Between 1672 1731, the Royal African Company transported 187,697 enslaved people on company-owned ships, 653 voyages to English colonies in the Americas. Of those transported, 38,497 enslaved people died en route. This predecessor company of Royal Adventures, from 62 to 72, transported 26,925 enslaved people on the company-owned ships, 104 voyages, of whom 6,620 died during their passage. The company continued purchasing and transporting slaves until 1731, when it abandoned slaving in favor of ivory and gold dust. List of notable investors and officials. Charles II of England. Edmund Andros. This guy was the governor of New England, governor of the provinces of New York, East and West Jersey, Virginia, and one other place. He caused a lot of issues for Major John Fenwick as well. When Fenwick came to America, we'll learn about him later. He actually shot at John Fenwick and almost shot him. Let's see who else on here. Sir George Carteret. Cooper. Last name Cooper. Samuel. Oh, shit. Interesting. Prince Rupert of the Rhine, Duke of Cumberland. I think that's what Cumberland County, New Jersey is named after. Maybe. Yeah. We have to. I need to learn more about this company. Anyway, that's our research on Sir George Carteret. Both men, not very cool. Before I get out of here, real quick, brand new episode of my self-titled podcast, the Ace Ford Podcast, on Spotify, now on iHeartRadio, now on Apple Podcast. I dropped my first episode of the year. I did with my youngest daughter. Y'all can check that out. This Wednesday morning, 5 a.m. on Spotify and all other major podcast platforms. A brand new episode of Birth Therapy comes out. Excited for that. And I have pictures, photos from my Grapevine, Texas collab that I've been dropping on my Instagram. You guys can check that out too. Linktree/AceFord. Alright, see you guys.